Biblical Stories as Code for Deciphering the Reality of the World Today. Part 2. The Code of the Tower of Babel. This code deals with the prideful desire of man to be God, to glorify his own name, and to expand the span of his own power and control. The builders of the Tower of Babel got together for a single purpose, which is materialistic ambition.
And they said, "Come, let us build us a city and a tower with its top in heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." Genesis 11:4.
According to this biblical story, God did not view favorably the buildings of the city and the tower, and consequently confused the languages and scattered them throughout the world. When we read this story, like other stories in the Bible, we can get the impression that God personally punishes people when their deeds are not aligned with His will. However, this view stems from an extremely low level of consciousness, whereas from an elevated level, punishment or reward does not come directly from God, but rather as a result of the laws of creation. One of the most familiar and well-known of these laws is the law of cause and effect, or by its other name, the law of reciprocal action, or the law of karma. Let me explain the difference between these two levels of consciousness and understanding with the following story. When my son Daniel was 2 years old, he loved, like many children, to shove his fingers in the electrical outlets. As a mother, I always tried to encourage my children's curiosity, but of course, when their safety was at stake, I would give them a very stern look that was impossible to misunderstand. So that is the look I gave Daniel and added additional verbal warning until he abstained from touching the electrical outlets. The reason that my then 2 years old Daniel curbed his curiosity was due to his fear of being punished. However, when Daniel grew up, he understood that he should not put his fingers in the electrical outlets, not because his mom would get angry and punish him, but because he might get electrocuted. Similarly, we have to read all the biblical stories and understand that they were written on the level that was appropriate for humanity in its infancy. Though now, as humanity must mature, we have to understand them at their highest level. That is, we have to raise the consciousness level from the childish understanding that God punishes or rewards us personally to the level of mature understanding that the will of God is expressed in creation through His laws, which automatically work for the better. Thus, going back to the story of the Tower of Babel, we must understand the punishment that is described in the Bible not as a personal punishment by God, but as a direct consequence to the actions of the tower's builders. When people unite only for materialistic and selfish reasons, they will ultimately separate and fail. Egotism and materialism lead every group of people to a state of narrow-mindedness, which will ultimately be marked with a complete lack of communication and understanding. This is the high spiritual explanation as to why the builders of the Tower of Babel could not hear or understand each other, and the reason their path separated without fulfilling their project. However, when a union is formed for a higher purpose that lies beyond the individual aspiration, then communication and a harmonious and blessed undertaking can exist even when there are differences in languages or culture. Construction or destruction, unity or separation are all concepts pertaining not only to large human enterprises or projects, but also to all relationships among people, including the intimate personal relationship between husband and wife. In the Hebrew language, the meaning of the word marriage is to rise up, to ascend. Therefore, only a couple who has a noble common goal and who grow and march together toward the light will be blessed with strong communication, harmony, fulfillment, and joy, and will be rightfully considered a married couple. On the other hand, all the couples therapy in the world will not bring about true happiness if the couple does not have a common noble spiritual goal, which lies beyond the mere fulfillment of selfish personal wishes and desires. This is so because true love emanates from the Spirit, and is therefore eternal. True love has nothing to do with falling in love, which lies in feelings, and is therefore fleeting. The opposite message to the code of the Tower of Babel can be seen in the story of the apostles who, after the death of Christ, assembled at the temple to celebrate the holiday of Pentecost. According to the New Testament, a great gust of wind brought with it tongues of fire, which parted and rested on the heads of the students. Consequently, they were inspired and started speaking in different tongues about the glory of God. Upon hearing that, the people attending the temple, who had come from many different places and spoke different languages, were both astounded and excited.
And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born? Acts 2, 7-8.
Flames or tongues of fire are sparks in the shape of a flame of a lighted candle, which clairvoyant people can visibly see. Those who receive added help from the light are marked with this flame. This flame can be either a funnel or an antenna, which enables a deeper and higher understanding of the divine message, so that it can be bridged and passed on to the rest of humanity. It is important to mention that this special help was not only bestowed on Christ's disciples in the past, but it is also offered to true disciples in our times. Today's builders of the Tower of Babel are the globalists who push for the New World Order to serve their own pride and agenda to crown Lucifer as their god. However, the New World Order empire is destined to collapse and fall, just as all empires had fallen throughout history, because they did not follow the will of the light. The new divine order that is now descending upon humanity will be ushered in only by those human spirit who have purified themselves from their own selfish wishes and desires and only seek to reach the noble goal that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven.